Hey there, everybody. I'm Dr. Dan here at Iowa State University, and wish I could be there with you in Mississippi. My family, my dad, everybody, we love Mississippi. We love the ability to come down there and participate in a lot of different things, and so many of you I know I would have known in the crowd. So anyway, it's great to be with you and share some time, albeit on the web. I'm going to share my screen here because today we're going to talk about uh, cattle working facilities, and and this is something I've spent a lot of time on in veterinary practice and a lot of time with different things, and the facilities do not replace the human animal interaction. The bovine animal has the ability to see 360 degrees nearly, and you can see here the steer's head, that the eyes are on the side of the head, and when a calf is giving you an ear, it's not like a horse where they're trying to hear you. They're giving you an ear so they can see you, because the ears will block the vision of that animal. And so when you're working with animals, the thing I always try to work with is the eye, and I'm always putting pressure on the eye. If I want the animal to go a certain direction, I'm going to be watching where I'm positioned at relative to that animal's eye, because as I start to move in from the non-reactionary zone to the pressure zone to the flight zone, there's a happy medium, and I think everybody understands that as you're working with facilities, that from where you get no reaction to where you get them to running away, and that sweet spot is being in that pressure zone where I can apply pressure to that eye, get that animal to move in the direction, and then as it moves that direction, I reward that animal by releasing the pressure. If the animal stops, I go back into that pressure zone, apply some pressure. If we get too close, obviously, we've all been run up a tree or run up a fence, but we don't want to get into that flight zone area. This is just a picture, and cattle crave hay, and when I get calves into a feed yard, the first thing I look for in a facility is the ability to get these calves some hay. And you can see as these calves, we hadn't had them there but a day, and when I have cattle that are consuming hay like this, and you'll see here in a minute, the one that I probably ought to pull, that isn't coming up, that isn't eating. If those calves, if they're coming up and they're hungry and they're not pulling, and then you got the guy out there like that says, I don't feel good. I use hay a lot. I use corn a lot and feed a lot to determine which animal. There's another one that I'd probably go pull. But the animals that aren't coming to the bunk, the animals that aren't coming up to get hay, those are the animals that I'm going to use. So a lot of times with my producers, even with ones that are really strong in animal husbandry, I'll use things such as hay to make sure that those animals are the one that we're not pulling ugly, that we're pulling sick. So sick cattle don't eat, and cattle that don't eat get sick. Another thing is mud, and I know we all fight mud, but if we're going to use dry lots and we're going to use places where cattle can't get up out of the bottom, or they can't go somewhere, you just have to understand that we've got to be able to keep those animals in a dry place, or a place where they can lay. You can see here that as mud increases in depth, average daily gain losses increase. And this is significant. This is, when you're talking about a 10% or 15% decrease in average daily gain, you're talking about removing the same effect that a steroid implant creates. And when you have receiving pins, and the first thing that new cattle want to do when they get to our place after a long haul on a truck is lay down. And if I have cattle that are in hock deep mud and they're sitting there shaking, they're not just cold, they're exhausted. So providing those animals relief, providing those facilities that they can lay down and get some rest after a stressful situation is important. This is something that we're doing. Not only do we put the hay in the bunk, but we'll spread this hay out and give these animals a place to lay down. And we're finding that putting hay down not only is good in the wintertime when it's cold to keep those calves from chilling down, we'll also find that in times of heat stress, if it's 98 degrees outside, that that ground temperature can be upwards of 130, 140 degrees. And by putting some straw out or putting some sort of insulation between the animal and the dirt, we can decrease that place where the animals lay down, decrease the temperature by about 25 to 30 degrees Fahrenheit. For loadouts, obviously we don't have a lot of these types of loadouts, but the things that I like on these loadouts, one is you can see here that we have the ability here to have this bump plate on the back, and that bump plate swings. It also has cushion when someone backs up against it, but when someone backs up against it, that thing's on a swivel and it snaps tight regardless of the angle that the person is coming in with the trailer. The other thing is that when we have these up here on the top, we have these swing gates on the ends of the loadout. And if that person isn't exactly square or is off by 6 inches, instead of those animals coming out against a solid pipe and banging their shoulder and having dropped shoulders, we have this on the end where it's just two little gates that just swing to wherever the trailer door is, so that we're flush on the bottom and cattle can't step through, and we're flush on the top with the door where animals aren't banging shoulders. When we work in these tub facilities, these big old tub gates are great to put on and have these big tubs, but those gates get sprung pretty good, and you need to grease those so that these work correctly. The one thing about gates that don't work correctly is people get hurt. And this is an example. This is a latch on a gate that should just swing. As you swing it, it should jump right up here on this little angle iron cut and latch, but instead the gate sprung, and now it doesn't latch at all unless someone walks up here, lifts this up and latches the gate. And what happens is cattle come back on you and you don't know it. And I've had two people that I know of. One of them died, and the other one is can't remember who their family is because of head injuries, because of gates coming back on them. So at your clinic, at different working facilities, just make sure your gates are working properly. Someone gets hurt in your clinic and it's on you. So we always have to be thinking about that. When we think about the 4 or 5 freedoms, the 5 freedoms for domestic animals, the things that we think about are freedom from fear and distress, which is the human animal interaction. And when we think about that on a farm, one of the things we're thinking about in that human animal interaction, the way that we measure it through the NCBA beef quality assurance audit, are some of these things here that we measure. The driving aid, which is, how many times you should not use a hot shot more than 10% of the time. If you are, then we need to adjust facilities and we need to probably adjust attitudes. Okay. Cattle falling upon release from the chute. You can see that we have no more than 2% of the cattle should fall exiting the chute. And a lot of times when cattle fall exiting the chute is they jump out and we make them make a quick right or left-hand turn, and cattle just on slick, on manure or urine out in front of the chute. If we're working a bunch of cattle, that's usually the number one reason we see cattle fall or stumble upon release. Vocalizing, no more than 4% of the cattle should vocalize before a procedure. And usually if cattle vocalize before a procedure, they're caught in a different way. And so they're like their shoulder up and the squeeze is on or something. If you just let them adjust and stand up, most of the time they wind up being fine. No more than 25% of the cattle should run or jump exiting the chute. And this is not a lope out of the chute. This is a tails up. Somebody did something bad to me back there, out of the chute. And then the last one is miscaught. And there's 2 types of miscatches. One is by the temples of the head. Okay, and you just need to readjust, let the animal put its head all the way through. And the other one is when we catch one by the hips, or we pantyhose a steer and we have them by the hips. And what we need to do is let that animal out. I know you're going to stand out there with the tagging gun and the syringe and the implant gun and say, hold on, I'll get him, I got him. And I'm just saving you a trip to the emergency room or to the courthouse. Just let those animals out, have a gate where you can bring them back around, and everybody winds up being better. When I review facilities, Animals, as you increase the slickness of the flooring, you increase the flight zone or the pressure zone, because cattle know they have to adjust quicker because they don't have as good a footing. So making sure that those are in place is important. Processing is something we do a lot of, and a lot of shoot work. A lot of us as veterinarians do a lot of shoot work, and processing is not a timed event. Okay, we like to say we got everything done, but this should be a quality event, not a quantity event, because how you handle those animals, how you develop that human animal interaction is going to be how that animal trusts you or is acclimated to you as it goes out into the field. Animals that don't trust you, or animals that distrust you, are not going to show you clinical signs. So the better off we do working cattle, and the quality of the event of that human animal interaction is going to help those animals understand whether or not they need to be scared of you, or whether they can trust you as a caregiver. And if they can trust you, they're going to show the clinical signs sooner, and you're going to be able to get those animals treated quicker. So cattle prefer to move from areas of dark to light, not light to dark. And you can see from this, a lot of times everybody's like, well, those cattle are afraid to go in there. Well, the reason why they're afraid to go into a barn is because they can't see in the barn. It's like you stand outside of a dark doorway on a bright sunny day, and if you were looking in a dark doorway and you had some sort of funny smell, and then all of a sudden you heard your buddy screaming while he's getting castrated in a barn, you probably wouldn't run right in that dark door. And cattle aren't any different. And so what we have to work on is that transition from the lighted area to the dark area, so they can see where they're going and what they're getting themselves into. If you're having trouble with cattle going into a facility and you want to know if it's due to lighting, just turn it around and work those cattle early in the morning and in the dark. And if they just flow right into a barn and flow right into a facility, because it's dark outside and light inside, you probably got your answer. We'll have a lot of people debate on solid-sided fences versus open fences, and I can tell you that on the inside of a facility where you're working, like here on the left side, I would rather have that be open-sided. And the reason is because I can communicate with those cattle and give them direction without getting in the pen. And so those are some of the things that we'll do. And it's all about viewing, right? It's all about the cattle taking cues from you, or cattle taking cues, being able to see what's coming. And cattle prefer to move downhill rather than uphill, because if you're going down the stairs, you can see everything in the landing below you. But if you're going up the stairs, you can't see what's on the landing above you. And so understanding that cattle prefer to move down. If you have open sides, they can communicate with you. If they can't see into a dark building, they're reluctant to go in. All of these things, they're not scared of shade. They stay in the shade every day. They're just worried about not being able to see where they're going. This is one that just kills me. These are concrete collars, and we walk by these kind of things every day, and this kind of looks cool, right? We've been shipping cattle here for 50 years. You can see from all the manure we've hauled out, and these are the original concrete collars of when we set these gates. And you can see down there at the end of this alley, this is where we put our fats when we're shipping in the slants. And as those cattle are coming out, coming down this thing, I don't know if any of y'all have ever stubbed your shin or your toe on the corner of the bed in the middle of the night. But can you imagine at 4 a.m. when we're shipping fat cattle and they're running down this alley, and the ones on the outside are banging their shins on these collars? As I approached all these concrete collars, I noticed there was hair on every one of them, indicating the cattle are hitting so hard that they're leaving hair. And I just can't imagine if we have cripples or things like that when we unload cattle at the packing plant or at the sale barn, what we could be creating. So just looking for the power of observation, looking for areas that cattle could be dinging their shoulders. If you have cattle and they're all lame on one side of the body, it's a pretty good idea that you have something wrong with your facilities, because foot rot isn't just left or right side of the body. And so as I start to think about that, and I start to think about cases, these are things that I'm dealing with. Helping those cattle transition, and even in your own clinic, putting in some sort of skylights. You can use these fiberglass see-through type siding to help bring natural light into a working facility. Now, I will do not recommend this if you're expecting large hail. I had large hail in West Texas one day, and it did come straight through where these fiberglass translucent panels were. But anyway, you can't believe how much natural light brightens up your working facility, brightens up the working area of your clinic or anywhere relative to just the regular lighting. Flooring, we mentioned this. It's vitally important. This is the flooring on a place where they were working 15,000 head of cattle, 1,500 head of cattle a day, and they were having broke legs. And if you got a little manure or urine on this, it just got slicker than a by golly. When it gets to this point, we either got to jackhammer this out and re-pour the floor, or there's a company called Animat, A-N-I-M-A-T, out of Canada. And Animat has flooring that you can just custom make it, and you can put it in your tub or your working area to provide great traction. It's really, really good stuff. Animat out of California, or out of Canada. This is a flooring. You can see they put some grooves in there, but they didn't get them thick enough. And if we don't get the grooves thick enough or deep enough, we want the grooves in the floor for cattle to be 1.5 inches wide by 1.5 inches deep. And these are really easy to make. If you just take 1.5 inch angle iron and bolt it upside down on your concrete float, you can pour your concrete, smooth it out, and then drop those in there. And I put those 1.5 inch angle iron on 8-inch centers across my float, and I can just make 8-inch diamonds or squares, because you want a place big enough when the animal's resting, if it's just standing back there, that it's not standing on a groove, but rather on something solid like the concrete. But then when they go to move and they move their legs out, they catch some concrete. And this flooring here is exactly what I mean by that. You can see these big grooves, and you can see the 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch, but a big enough area that those animals can stand on comfortably. The one thing about your concrete, don't pour too much, because if you pour too much too fast and it gets dry, that angle iron won't sink down into that concrete, and you will not like the results of that. So I'm going to talk about 3 different crowding facilities, and this is the Temple tub. And the Temple tub is simply that cattle will come down. You can follow my arrow here. The cattle come down into this round pen, and basically they go around that center post. And what's really important is the angle. The cattle should have the sense that as they go down around that center post, they're going back the direction in which they came. So many times I see people just have a straight pipe in to a narrowing down to the snake. And when you do that, cattle, they see where they're going. So they then turn around, and you're standing there with the tub gate doing the cha-cha, trying to keep them from coming back on you. And again, that's when you get hurt. When you have this set up correctly and those cattle go around that center post, you can grab this catch gate back here, and when you shut it, the only thing you see are tails going around that tub center post. So really important when you're looking at this. And the other thing is that the lane or the alley coming to the tub should be the same. The tub should be the same diameter as the alley that's coming up to that tub. So if you have a 12-foot alley, you need a 12-foot diameter or 12-foot radius tub. So if you have a 10-foot alley, you can have a 10-foot tub. But it's really important that you don't have a narrowing at the entrance of the tub as those cattle. These things are so easy to draw. If you can see there, when I watch Temple, if you put your compass and you put the point right there on the center and draw a 12-foot circle, and then you come over here and right off the side of it, you draw another 16-foot circle, you just drew yourself a tub and a snake system. Really, really easy to do. The other thing about the tub should always be half full. If you get it too full, the cattle won't be able to move. So this is a video of that I took. As you can see what cattle see as they come up here. So they come up here and they're going to transition into the pretty good light transition. They come into this tub, and there's where we need the light, is at the entrance of that snake. So then the cattle come to the entrance of that snake, and then you see that as they come around, they can see about 2 to 3 body lengths ahead of them. And this is probably the thing that I don't like about the tub system, because I love about these straight alleys is once cattle get to that point where it's straight, man, they can see straight out of this and they can see daylight and they really move. There we put an expanded metal ramp so the cattle could come up. We have louvers on the side of the chute so the cattle can't see you while you're working the squeeze. We have some tire mats out there for flooring, and then there they go into heaven, into western Kansas. This is Javier just bringing some cattle, and this is what you should see when they go around the end of the tub, when you have this set up correctly. You'll see Javier's going to bring 2 or 3. The biggest problem we have really working cattle is when people just bring too many. And see, he's just got enough. He's going to get these cattle moving up here to this facility. And a lot of times when they're holding their hands above their head, people that are working cattle, they're trying to communicate with the cattle in the front. So then, as you can see, all you see is the tails going around that tub, and it's safe. This is an example of too many cattle. Once they get like this, you're just as well let them out and bring about half of them back, because we want them to be able to get lined out, be able to see the snake up here ahead of where's the exit. A lot of times if you have cattle that are circling in the tub, they're having a hard time seeing where you want them to go, and they don't know how to get out of there, because sometimes it can be confusing as to just their depth perception is terrible. And sometimes they have a hard time differentiating a solid wall versus one that's a solid wall behind an opening. So you got to put light on it. You got to help the cattle see, make sure they're on the right side of the tub and not have too many animals in there so they can see where they're going to go. This guy is standing back here with ear tag tape, waving and shaking, trying to get the cattle to go into the snake in front of him. But all those cattle are doing is turning around and looking at him and saying, "Hey, where do you want me to go?" And he's that, they don't speak the language, and so standing in the back behind the cattle just gets them to turn around and look at where you're at. This is a bud box, and a bud box is really easy to build. If you have 6 panels, you can build a bud box out in the pasture. A bud box is 2 panels long, 1 panel wide. You need a catch gate right here. This is the snake here. The rule about the bud box is you never bring more cattle than can fit in the snake at once. So if your snake holds 3 cattle, you can only bring 3 at a time. If it holds 10 cattle, you can bring 10 at a time. And that's a reason why a lot of people like these double snakes, is not so much that cattle go in them quicker, but because I can hold more cattle in those facilities at once. So we're going to bring those cattle from the alley. We're going to bring them up here. We put them in, and I'll just show you. You bring these cattle up. I'm going to push play. So these guys are bringing these cattle up. They've got a little slip gate there. Guy brings them into the bud box. Again, 20 foot long by 12 foot wide is the bud box dimensions. So then these guys come up here and they park themselves. They apply pressure. Those cattle go around them. And then as the cattle go around them, the guy doesn't need to follow them up. As the cattle go around them, they slip right into that alley. This is a cheap method of building a crowding facility that works really, really well. This is an example here of what the cattle see. The cattle come into the bud box. They're looking here. They can't see anything. They come back around. They're getting pressured. They come back. They get to the point of the solid gate, and then you can see that they go right in that double alley. This is just an example of how this bud box works. Javier's going to go get them. Remember, you never bring more cattle than what can fit in the snake at one time. And so I said, well, Javier, this is an example for people that are going to be watching it. Let's just bring 2 or 3 cattle, so we make sure that it works correctly, because whenever you're doing a cattle handling demonstration, if you want things to go wrong, that's generally when it does go wrong, is when you're going to show someone else how to do it. So I said, Javier, whatever you do, don't bring too many, just bring 3 or 4. And he says, okay, Dr. Dan, I'll just bring them all. So anyway, we bring too many cattle up here, but you can see as he's walking up here to this bud box, and you're going to see what happens when you bring too many. He's going to shut this gate. That's the one gate you want to be solid if you're going to have solid sides on a bud box. He's going to walk up here. You don't even have to be inside. You can be on the outside of the fence if you want and still get this to work. But you can see that as they come around him and they head straight for that tub, and then when there's for that snake and there's too many animals, you can see, and then Red decides it's time to come back on us and that. But anyway, don't bring more animals that will fit in the snake at once. And the new system is a bud tub. And the bud tub is a tub system here. So the animals come in up here at the top. Here's the feeder alley and the gate. And the animals go around the tub. And then as they come back around, they're going into that Daniel's single file. And this is just an example of a new bud tub design. These guys are going to work in some calves. And so we're videotaping here on the side. Here come the cattle into the tub facility. You can see the handle right here. This guy's going to grab this. He's going to shut this gate. Those cattle go around to the dead end, and they come back, and you can notice that they don't have anywhere else or notice anywhere else to go but into that facility. Another thing, if you're using this in your clinic, and I think this is going to be something that's going to be really important in the future, going to be pretty cool, is these movable tub gates and walkthroughs. I want you to see right here where this cursor is. This is actually a man gate, so that when the person comes through and shuts this gate, they can slip right through without climbing over or climbing under anything. And even with these people looking around, you'll see how this works. So we come up here. We shut this. These animals get here to this point. Right now, I walk through that man gate. I'm trying to get that steer's head around. He's not going to do it, so I just walk over there and just push this gate. This is the tub gate. And if I was working bulls, and these guys finally realize they're in the way, if I'm working animals or doing something, this is something that's really slick, really easy to do, and something I think a lot of clinics need to have in decreasing. I hate it when people come up and say, when we do cattle handling demonstrations, they say, boy, I wish my vet was here to see these facilities or how you talk about handling cattle. And that's something we just got to get better at as a profession. This is the double alley. The thing I like about this Daniel system is that there's hydraulics there. These no backs can be adjusted by controls back here in the back rather than having a one size fits all. And then these sides slide in so that the animals, don't turn around, or you can make it wider for cattle. And the double alley is nice for holding more cattle, but it doesn't necessarily get more animals in it. If you don't have adjustable sides, you have to go narrow at the bottom and wide at the top. And we go 16 inches at the bottom to 32 inches at the top on a 5-foot fence for a snake. And the reason we do that is so the little ones don't turn around and the big ones don't get stuck. But 16 inches at the bottom to 32 inches at the top. These hydraulic chutes are nice. You can see the louvers on the sides. I can see through when I'm looking perpendicular, but the calves can't see you when you're using the controls. This is a clinic up in Ainsworth, Nebraska that used a little side head gate so that you don't pull a calf inside the hydraulic chute. And anybody that's pulled a calf in a hydraulic chute, first of all, you've had the heifer beat you with the calf jack like a ninja with nunchucks. And the other thing is that after you get done, you're all proud and you pulled the calf and the squeeze is on, you turn around and she's still straining and she just prolapsed. We like to let this animal get out, have her breathing room, and also so that we can make sure she doesn't prolapse afterwards. There's that calving gate, and now she can move side to side after we get her there. The other thing that The other thing that we will see is that on this facility is that in the sealant, instead of having cords and drop cords and hoses laying around the floor, they put their hose up in the ceiling and they put their drop cords up in the ceiling on these circular devices, and these things can come down, and you can do your C-section with the hose or work on the foot with the hose, and you can just click the thing and it goes back up in the air rather than tripping over it and having water all over the floor from leaking hoses and drop cords in the water and different things to that nature. And then right here, you can't tell it, but they can put those cattle in the head gate, and then the sides just pop out of this back part where they can do their C-sections instead of having them up in the chute. And it just gives you a better field for doing chute work, a better system for doing surgical procedures and things of that nature. Hydraulic chutes, you need to check your pressure. You want them 650 to 800 psi. If you get them too high, I've seen people with really low fulcrums on the bottom on little calves have their psi up at 1400. We actually had a broken pelvis on a calf because of it. Real easy to adjust and check. Flooring, leaving the chute, rebar on concrete is a disaster. It's great intentions, but the cattle, if you don't have it welded to the floor, the cattle's hooves they're so heavy they'll go right underneath the rebar and cause a lot of problems. We'll have cattle I actually put rebar in a trailer once thinking that I was going to improve traction, and I wound up with animals degloving their hooves. This is just slicker than by golly, as cattle come out of that chute, they wore the grooves down, they got down to the rebar. It's just not a good situation. We want to use the mats, like these double D tire mats, or again, Animat out of Canada makes custom mats that'll fit your clinic, fit your working facility. All really, really good stuff. I just want to say thanks. And appreciate y'all being here today. And if you have any questions, we're going to have an open session here later. This was only about a 35 minute video, but I have found that if I get them too long, y'all are snoozing. And if I get them too long, that we just don't have time to have the discussion. So hopefully we'll have a great discussion following this, but thanks for including me, and we'll see you here after bed.